Ethan and Benjamin Castle are Americans. Watching the footy.
Liam Ryan saying, kick it my way, I want to jump over the pack, and here he comes! Ryan!
This is Buddy Franklin! This is the greatest showman!
Got the handball off to Myers. Myers looking for the lead of Stengel. Gee, they're good. Gee, they're sharp. Razzle dazzle Rioli.
Oh, who else? McDonald! Around the body. Jazz up! He's off!
From inside the centre square. Boys kick the goal. Boys kick the goal. From inside the centre. Fuck! I can't believe it.
Good time of day, one and all. From the Golden State comes, I hate watching the Gold Coast Suns, at least for me. I'm Benjamin Castle, coming to you from San Diego.
I'm Ethan Castle, coming to you from South San Francisco.
And this is episode 246 of Americans Watching the Footy, where we're going through round 15, the penultimate of the bye rounds. Feels weird that we got these extra bye rounds, but again, as we've said multiple times, we don't mind. This round lacked a lot of drama, and still, I can clearly say I liked this round.
Because you didn't have to watch the Eagles.
I didn't have to watch the Eagles, yes, although they still lost, and successful hate watch in the end. Stressful hate watch.
I just ended up enjoying that game just out of love for the expansion cup. It was fun, entertaining, chaotic football. Definitely the game of the round.
Yeah, it'll take a bit for us to get to that, but clearly the game of the round.
I will say there was one game that I was pretty excited about this round that just outright sucked and was very disappointing.
Is it the one involving your team?
No, that was just, we played like shit, but there was compelling action there. There was one of the Saturday games.
Ah, yes, it was the middle one.
I mean, it was an important game. It just wasn't a fun one. And because it was on Fox Sports 1, it was a lot of Americans' introduction to football.
That being a Port in Sydney, I wanted it to be compelling. There were reasons for it to be. It just wasn't.
Do we start there, or do we start earlier in the week with Origin and Cricket Talk?
You know what? Cricket Talk has often been at the start. So, Ethan, let's go ahead with the Cricket Talk.
Yeah, so I went to Major League Cricket Monday and Tuesday at the Oakland Coliseum. It was really fun. Unfortunately, neither of the matches I went to ended up being all that close.
We talked about both those matches already. You did get to see a Glenn Maxwell century.
Yes, and of course, like every other MLC game has been more fun, basically, than the ones that I went to. They're playing them in Texas now with far poorer crowds than we had in Oakland. You had LA Knight Riders winning a close one over Seattle, and then you had the Washington Freedom barely edge out the Texas Super Kings, beat them with like 2 balls remaining. I need to know, do any of the big Bash League teams have like really corny songs? Because some of the MLC teams have really cheesy songs. Now, Giddy Up Super Kings is kind of silly, but the Washington Freedom song was this really cheesy rap, and then at the end it goes, freedom, freedom, freedom. And they play that part from the end after every boundary and every wicket, and it's awesome.
I feel like I'd get annoyed by it on like a Hala Bowl level, but it's not as good as Hala Bowl, which is, of course, the Rajasthan Royals song.
Yeah, none of these are that good. I will say the like LA Knight Rider song, which we didn't get to hear much when Washington was absolutely pounding them, was like part of the stuff from the actual Kolkata Knight Rider song, which is like Corbo Lorbo Jeepo, come see conquer sort of type deal.
You see, there should be connectivity if you got ownership and like branding that's the same. It's the Knight Riders group.
And, you know, the Super Kings, you know, it's like in Giddy Up Super Kings, they have Whistle for Texas and the fans have whistles. But I got to say, seeing Maxwell like chase down that century, it was not a question of if he'd stay up there long enough. It was a question of if they had enough balls left for him to do it. And he did. And that was really fun. And that was the match that I brought a few friends to. It was their first exposure to cricket. And they were pretty entertained, even though it was a blowout. And we got a bunch of free shit. I have flags from all 4 of those teams. I have a Washington Freedom hat and shirt. I have an LA Knight Riders scarf. And I think I'm torn between the Unicorns and the Freedom. Just like internationally, I've watched some of this India-England test, and I'm definitely torn between India and Australia as for national teams.
Australia with ease, I'm sorry.
I do like India a lot, mostly because watching Jasprit Bumrah bowl is fucking amazing.
He's the best damn fast bowler out there. Speaking of the
He's
Knight Riders,
the best bowler in the world right now, but it was also fun seeing a few players in particular. Like seeing Mitch Owen play was cool. Seeing Maxwell was obviously cool. Got to see Marcus Stoinis with the Texas Super Kings. Also got to see Faf du Plessis, who's got an awesome voice, by the way, and Nandre Berger. Like the two players I was most excited to see at Major League Cricket were Nandre and Dre Russ. And unfortunately, Andre was not doing very well. He got caught on like his fourth ball when I was there. But it was just cool to see him, and like LA Knight Riders as a whole have a bunch of good West Indies players. So that was fun to watch. I think Rovman Powell's on that team too.
and Narine and Sherfane Rutherford. So they're pretty stacked with West Indies talent. A whole lot to like there, and Major League Cricket is on 7 and 7 plus. So go ahead and watch it and see what cricket venues in the United States are like, I guess. I hope they could come back to Oakland, and I wonder just like the success of that, the actual crowds that might compel them to play like playoffs there in the future. It's a serious question. You know the weather's going to be fine. Like they'll consider it a bit cold, but
the players were like freezing. It was hilarious. To go from that to Dallas, and then later they're going to be in like Bradenton, I think. It's like, you're going to miss this.
Grand Prairie, you're looking at like highs in the 90s. Looks like it could even get up to like 97 this coming weekend, which is 36 Celsius. And I think Lauderhill in Florida, I mean, that's going to be similar with even greater humidity and good thunderstorm chances. Like you're going to miss the calm weather of the California coast, guys, whether or not you believe it. I hope that MLC continues to thrive. I hope that more of these stadiums get built. I really haven't heard anything about like the plans for Great Park in Irvine or the Santa Clara County Fairgrounds, but I want it to happen. Also,
I can say this. Cricket has definitely made strides in America recently, just a matter of how big those strides are.
Now I'm just realizing, though, that the LA Knight Riders have a really obvious opportunity for a celebrity endorsement.
Oh, it's a wrestling thing. I had to Google it. I didn't know.
His promos tend to circulate pretty well on Twitter, I found. Hardly watch wrestling, but apparently he's from Maryland, so he's cool in my book. Anyway, footy time.
Fremantle, 16-8-104, defeating Essendon 9-9-63. Once again, Essendon just too badly injured and shorthanded between everyone who was already hurt and the Sam Durham sub. To borrow the term, they gave it a good crack.
Well, you get a point just for having a crack.
You get a point just for having a crack.
And they only got 3 points in the third quarter. It was a 16-point game at the half, and Freo stretched that out to 37 by the final change. Essendon, I don't think, ever really got into rhythm in the second half. They looked like they were almost questioning themselves with the uncontested play that they were kind of forced into. And weirdly, Fremantle were also reluctant to go down the line at times, despite having been successful from some of those plays.
Well, going down the line often involves Jeremy Sharp, who's probably the least reliable kick out there.
And yet he's also gotten less and less of the ball. So either you take the risk with Sharp or you go elsewhere in the selection. There's just kind of brutal honesty there. Their late burst in the third quarter, where they got 3 of those 4 goals, it came from midfield and stoppage success. This was a masterclass from the likes of the Brayshaw-Sarong duo and Luke Jackson in the ruck. Not that Vigo Vicentini was poor on debut, it's just you're going up against Luke Jackson. These things happen in war.
Vicentini was fine, just Jackson was very good. Caleb Sarong was really solid with Andrew Brayshaw kind of acting in support of him. Nathan O'Driscoll got going as the game went on, and then third quarter, I really liked Jordan Clark. He was kind of snaking around everywhere. He doesn't get like the lizard comparisons to Nick Blakey because he doesn't usually press as far forward, but he does some similar stuff. I do think it's more snake-like than lizard-like.
He's also more an outside player. Sarong, by the way, with 35 and Brayshaw with 29. So those numbers keep up. We talked about those in the progress report where, like, if they both get into the high 20s, usually that's pretty good for Freo. And Sarong with a multi-goal game. He doesn't kick too many goals, but the ones he gets tend to be pretty memorable. This was his first multi-game of the season, and only his 5th multi-goal game in his 117-game career. So yeah, those ones are going to stand out, along with 7 clearances and 6 score involvements. Jackson led the way there with 12. Also, Josh Tracy actually kicked 3, whereas he'd been a strong contested player, hasn't really been clunky a lot of marks, but has impacted enough contests to matter. Love that he was actually able to get on the end of a few again. I don't think that much of this game really surprised me once I saw Merritt on halfback and wing, which infuriates me because we know that's not where he plays best. Maybe they're just trying to get him to engineer more out there, but you have enough players who can move in that part of the ground. Archie Roberts was one of the more active and better players for Essendon. I wanted him to get some more responsibility, maybe see what he could even do on the inside.
Yeah, I mean, they kind of keep him towards the defensive 50 typically, and they're at a point where, like, I'd love to see him get some of those options, but they're just short-staffed. You know what did make me happy with Essendon was that Lachlan Blackiston had a much better second game.
He did a couple good early moments there. Blackiston, actually not any marks, but contested much better. I thought he actually grabbed a couple, but guess not. Yeah, Dave Unerves shaken off from him and Archer May, who kicked his first 2 goals. I liked how he moved. And 2 goals from Lamont Lual made me happy.
Yeah, he looked solid. Some of this young core for Essendon is promising.
They need more development put into them, and they're pressed into duty a bit too early, obviously, with the defensive outs. Better game from Jackson Pryor, too, in a lot of respects.
Yeah, he was okay. I didn't get Angus Clark in the defensive 50, though. That did not work.
No, we've seen him best wing to half forward flank, so that's another misstep there, Brad Scott. How long are they going to persist with him is another question. I mean, he could get a bit of a pass this year because of the injuries, but the problems were evident earlier. And yes, I am going to question Brad Scott's position, and he's going to be the first coach I'm putting under the microscope in this episode, because there was a lack of drive to really take on the game for much of the second half. It took basically Will Setterfield throwing his body everywhere for some of that to happen outside of the forward 50. And I feel bad for Setterfield because he took a good deal of punishment.
Yeah, he was not able to really put the clamps on Sarong. Last week, he also couldn't do much to stop Bailey Smith. Where, like, it's funny because Setterfield has cemented himself as a guy who belongs in a team, which at the start of the year, you know, he was fighting for his spot. And he's had a couple of games where he's tagged well and a couple of games where he's used the ball decently well. It just hasn't really done both, which would be a lot to ask for, admittedly.
Thankfully for Essendon, they should get some reinforcements coming out of the bye. On 2-week timelines as of June 17th, you got all of Saad El-Holy, Mason Bredman, Zach Reed, and Jordan Ridley. Oh, and Kyle Langford. So there's potential for this team to be a lot healthier out of the bye. It wouldn't be an axe swinging. It would be just a replenishing.
There are a lot of guys playing in this Essendon team that, like, if you throw out a team with most of these guys, you know, a year or two from now, you'll feel pretty good. Just, it's not ready yet.
No, and I'll say that about Clark, about Lual, about May.
Yeah, unlike cookie dough, which is great without even needing to put it in the oven, like, this needs some time to bake.
So yeah, Thursday night, I wasn't blown away by anything, but not like I was really expecting to be. Freo got the job done when I think everybody expected him to. That's now 5 in a row for him.
They are squarely into the finals discussion. How much did you tip them to win by?
24. I didn't want to go crazy.
I had 31, so I was closer.
But here they are now in 6th with a game in hand on some of the teams above them. Their schedule isn't ridiculous, obviously. And if they can keep going like this, I'll be encouraged. None of their road games the rest of the way are easy, I'll say that. Sydney, Collingwood, Port, Bulldogs. And with 13, yes, say it, Hutto,
13!
being the reliable number to make finals, it means they will by and large have to clean up at home in order to get there.
That makes this week's game against the Saints enormous. That's really one you got to take care of at home against a team you lost to already. And I guess that also puts some emphasis on probably the round 21 home game against Carlton and the round 22 trip to Port. Take care of those, and then you just win like one of the Hawthorn or Brisbane games, and you're in great shape.
By that point, you'd be in shape for like a home final, at least. And 13 has stayed that guaranteed number. I ran the numbers on this and checked. Going back to the start of the Final Eight in 1994, never yet has a team to reach 13 wins missed finals. Although a team with 52 points missed last year. Collingwood, thanks to their 2 draws.
That's right. And that was kind of a backdoor 52.
Geelong, 6-15-51, defeated by the Brisbane Lions, 14-8-92. Patrick Dangerfield and Tyson Stengel's party most definitely spoiled. I like the wideout. I want Geelong to keep doing stuff with this because the fan engagement was higher for that.
It was loud. It was a great environment, and the team just kind of shit the bed.
I want them to go like Tennessee mode, stripe out, like alternating blue and white stripes around the ground. Get more of this college football atmosphere in there because college football has the most reliable fan engagement in America, I'll say. Like, especially Southern college football.
Yeah, atmosphere was great. And, I was thinking, we're kind of due for a stinker, but I didn't think it was going to be this one. But I kind of compare this to the Bulldogs game in the rain last year. Just, they played great. We played shitty. They scored 4 goals very quickly. Kyle Oman started off on fire. So did Cam Rayner, who I thought had one of his best games of the year. Will Ashcroft was really good. And I thought Geelong's both game plan and execution were really bad. Just a lot of turnovers, and not just that, like dumb turnovers leading to goals. Bailey Smith's 2 worst games have been the 2 against the Lions. This was probably the worst game Brian Myers has played since the 2021 opener at Adelaide. And I think you're entitled to 1 bad game every like 4.5 seasons. I think that's fair.
Are you?
Big sequence right before halftime with a deflating Hugh McCluggage goal with 20 seconds left, pushed the lead to 24. Mark O'Connor had a shot after the halftime siren and it faded left. Getting it to 18 there would have been massive, and then the Lions got the opening goal of the third, pulled away, led by 45 at one point. Kind of dominated.
After Rayner kicked the goal to open the second half, and then Brisbane kicked the next one as well. That was one of Logan Morris's 5. There was really no doubt from there, especially with Brisbane being much better, converting from their inside 50s. I thought Geelong were looking far too high most of the time. No, you didn't have Jack Payne. Like, you still have Harris Andrews to deal with. And Andrews, I know, got a lot of love from the coach's votes. Was a rock-solid defender again. I know that I've talked a lot about his tandem with Jack Payne, but the fact that he can still play as well as he does without Payne is more than commendable. He is as good a defensive leader as there is in the game, and he deserves the praise that he gets for this one as the Lions get their first win at Cardinia Park since 2003. That means only 4 clubs have not won at Geelong in the past 23 seasons.
Let's see, that would have to be the Suns, because they've never won there. Collingwood, because they never fucking play there. I'm going to guess Hawthorn, because they hardly ever come there.
Nope, 2006.
Essendon?
2021.
Essendon did not win at Geelong in 2021.
They beat Gold Coast there.
Ah.
Counts as a win at Cardinia Park. The others are the Saints and Crows.
I was going to go for the Eagles next, but okay. Big picture, I'm not concerned.
I don't think there's a reason to be. This is a game where I always thought the Lions' play style would match up well against Geelong because Brisbane are probably the most reliable team punishing from turnover in the entire competition. They've got the midfield depth to do it, and they've really grown comfortable in that forward 50 setup. Morris has been on fire these past couple of weeks, the youngest player to kick 5 goals or more in back-to-back games since Matthew Lloyd in 1997. And Hugh McCluggage has kept up with his very good year. A goal from 22 for him. Josh Dunkley doing the defensive midfield job beautifully. And Dane Zorko had enough time to have a lot of impactful kicks. 11 intercepts and 7 score involvements for Zorko. From the beginning, everything worked for Brisbane. Even when Kai Lohman was robbed of a hanger, he got another chance almost immediately and took that one. Very happy to see Lohman back in action for multiple games because the dude deserves a break. I mean, a break from the injuries, not a break from the footy, because footy's exciting with him around.
If there's a player that's going to routinely kick our ass, I am fine with it being Cam Rayner. He is very likable. He is probably my favorite Brisbane Lion, and he just plays the game the way I like. You know, plays in both the midfield and forward roles, but I didn't like the game plan here on multiple fronts. Ollie Dempsey playing way too far back to really be able to impact things offensively. Some of it was just bad execution, where basically it would be turnover, Brisbane goes down the corridor, then they go out wide to Hipwood or somebody who's wide open, and then they make the entry kick, and that leads to the goal. There was one sequence in particular that was like a perfect example of that. It was in the second quarter to set up one of Logan Morris's 5 goals. One of the only negative moments for Connor O'Sullivan all night. He had a bad kick that led to a counter. Hipwood was out the left side, and then he centered to Logan Morris, who got position on Jack Henry. Like, I can't fault Jack Henry for some of the one-on-ones he lost because he was always sent back scrambling because of these turnovers. I don't think like having Sam Baconi would have had all that much of an impact on how this went.
I know you're going to go through the negatives. Where were the positives for Geelong other than the polished turd winner Tom Atkins and Jeremy Cameron?
O'Sullivan had a decent game, and Tom Stewart just looks healthier and smoother and more stable than he did not that long ago. Like around the time of the Eagle game, he was looking really shaky, and he definitely looks better now. So there's a positive, but negatives, game plan wise, you're matching up Oisin Mullen, who has, first off, credit to Mullen. He has gone from why is he in the lineup to being a pretty good tagger and shut down opponent. And 3 years ago, maybe it would have made sense to put him on Charlie Cameron. The way Charlie Cameron's played this season, that was just stupid. It was just a bad matchup to waste him on. Because Cameron's done very little. If he gets hot and beats you, so be it. Instead, you let Rayner run wild. You didn't do enough to stop Zach Bailey. Like, I just thought you would have started off with O'Connor and Mullen against Neal and McCluggage in some combination.
O'Connor on Neal, yes. Mullen, I see as having more utility on like the half forwards and less the solid midfielders.
So, you could have put him on any of McCluggage, Bailey, Neal, Ashcroft. In fact, Will Ashcroft, in hindsight, I think is probably the move there, although I totally understand the argument for McCluggage as well. Ashcroft ended up with 28 and just a really smooth game. 6 clearances, a goal, 2 assists, 8 score involvements, over 82% efficiency with a third of his possessions contested. Dunkley's 30 disposals. I mean, he was fine. I didn't think he was special.
He did a lot with the ball, but it was the pressure aspects of the tackling as well, an octopus for him. I don't think anybody plays the defensive midfield role better in the league. And if you just got somebody like that who can bother Bailey Smith when he's trying to go through, force him into some worse passes, that's all you really need. And Dunkley had a joint game high 28 pressure acts, which furthers my point there. We could go through all the numbers here, but I don't think the way the Lions won this game was all that shocking aside from Morris kicking another bag. Because we see Rayner putting up performances like this, being able to punish on rebounds really well, and he lets them on the board. He's not the most accurate player, 3-2 from 19 with 5 clearances, but he's as dynamic as they get, and he's,
again, affected the game on multiple levels.
I feel like he's a bit more of a wild card in that Brisbane midfield to half forward look, because I feel like the other players have more easily defined roles, whereas Rayner, it's not a jack of all trades, master of none situation, but he, I think, has a lot more forward utility than most of the other guys who he might end up in the center 6 with. not diminishing any of their finishing abilities as well, because we know what Will Ashcroft could do, for example. But I think Rayner's like the one who's the hardest to define on the game plan.
I really think you can beat the Lions on nights where like McCluggage and Neal are really good. It's not easy. You'd obviously rather shut them down, but I think it's way harder to beat them on a night when Ashcroft is on.
When Will Ashcroft is on, when Rayner is on, good fucking luck. Either one of them, and if it's both, you might win by a goal or two, but most likely not.
Bye week couldn't come at a better time for Reece Stanley. He got pushed around by Darcy Fort. A healthy Toby Conway would be great just because even though Stanley's totally exceeding expectations, would love to give him, a week off here and there.
And for the Lions, speaking of rucks, I mean, they've had Oscar McInerney getting through another VFL game.
Also, the forward entry strategy was poor, and I think that's something where you could have utilized Dempsey better, you could have utilized Brad Close better, but bombing it in long against Harris Andrews does not work. Now, without Jack Payne, there was an argument to bomb it in long, but if you're going to do that, you've got to look at where Harris Andrews is and kick it nowhere near him, and instead constantly kicking it right at him. Just does not work. So, bad process, bad results, but this is not a game I will lose tons of sleep over. I will be worried if there's a third matchup with the Lions. Hopefully that would be in a prelim or the grand final. They look much more like themselves now, but yeah, I think, again, due for a stinker. This was the stinker. Unfortunate it was on a big stage. Carlton 10-13-73 defeated by North Melbourne 13-6-84.
Speaking of stinkers on big stages, because there were over 56,000 there to watch North get a second win at the G. It's their first time with consecutive wins at the home of footy since 2015. And they did that despite limping to the line, going goalless to the last. They'd worked out enough distance before that. 6-0 in the second, 6-3 in the third. Hell yeah, North. And they won it from the middle. After not having much of it in the first quarter, Tom Powell may have been the best in the middle quarters. Luke Davies-Uniacke with one of his most consistent games. From midfield into the forward 50, Luke Parker ended up connecting things really well. And this is a game where you saw kind of the pieces all fit there for North. I haven't even talked about Harry Shiza, who had a steadier, better half forward look, a goal from 30. Colby McKercher getting downfield for 2.
Those middle quarters, he was really sharp. Davies-Uniacke was just solid up and down. I was surprised that Tom Powell got the 10 from the coaches, and I thought he was good. I just didn't think he was the best.
Even contributions further down the lineup. Like, look at guys who ranked down near the bottom for fantasy, because those are often players who get unfairly derided. Griffin Logue stuck with his contests. Griffin Logue, stuck with his contest. Wasn't, objectively good or bad, but he was what they needed this game. Rob Hansen, super glad he got a full game. He had a goal. Jack Darling probably had the most surprising play of the entire season. This is I can't believe that, even though it wasn't a goal in any way, though we did kick one. Jack Darling ran down Adam Chera.
That was one of the cooler moments of this game, but the feel-good story of this game by far, receiving 3 coaches' votes, and I'm way behind on Bounce, but could have definitely thrown him into a Golden Fist conversation this week. Toby Pink.
Toby Pink held Charlie Curnow goalless.
Even though Curnow totally sold a push in the opening minutes that was really fucking bad. This was awesome. Like, not just for Pink to play well, but to do it in this game on this stage.
Against the 2-time Coleman medalist.
5 spoils, technically only contested one-on-one, but won that. Team high 7 intercepts.
Toby Pink, ladies and gentlemen.
Toby Pink was a shutdown defender.
No, we weren't watching Glenelg. I want to laugh, but it's like not out of, it's partially out of Carlton failing on a big stage, but it's more just gratitude that North are actually showing something here. And it was a game where it was up and down the entire group of 23. I mean, Jacob Constanti was high impact per touch again. That's another one who probably won't get talked about much, especially because he didn't kick a goal. but a fresher forward with 5 tackles and assists. This is a game where you look through this full 22 and it's like, can we fault any of them for the first 3 quarters?
First quarter, Carleton didn't take advantage of their opportunities. Let's note that. Carleton could have jumped in front pretty quickly.
Yeah, what did they kick? 2-6. Yeah, that would do it. Definitely some sign tapping stuff.
Don't make me tap the sign.
It didn't surprise me that North took a bit to get into the game.
It felt like Carleton weren't that much better to the point that they should have been up by like, it's not like they should have kicked 6-2. They probably should have had another goal or two. It should have been more like, I don't know, 23-9 or 28-9 than 18-9.
None of the misses were that bad. Like, there are shots that you understand why they're getting missed. It's just those things pile up to the point that Ninja would tweet about it. We'll note that the Rucks really canceled each other out in this game. No real dominance from either Tristan Cherry or Tom DeConing. So
I did agree with a couple of Carleton fans who thought that Mark Pittenet, who did play in this game, was the better matchup body-wise for Jerry.
Yes, but I think still he didn't end up getting a real edge. Like, yeah, the hit-out numbers favored, but the actual work on the ground, aside from George Hewitt, it was North who were better at that. That was where Powell and Davies-Uniacke cleaned up. And I'd say Hewitt was one of the better players for Carleton alongside Zach Williams, who was good up and down the oval, a goal and an assist from 18. Although of all people to get like completely riled up and give up a double goal, it was Hewitt.
That felt like a really, really colossal moment in this game. That's where it actually felt like, wow, North are probably going to win this game. Because
there are things cascading to that for sure. Carleton were left ball watching a lot.
Nick Haynes had one really lazy bad one there. So on that goal where Haynes was ball watching, Hewitt knocks Jerry over, and that creates the double goal.
Yes, before that though, Nick Larkey was untouched after a Cam Zerhar kick was spoiled. A couple others where they just weren't quick enough to get to ground balls, which is surprising given how defensively sound the Blues tend to be, though we do think of their aerial prowess more. But Haynes just had Cam Zerhar go behind him and offered no resistance whatsoever. That Jerry manages to convert on the double goal opportunity. It's a 40-point game early in the third. I wasn't still convinced, but I thought in my head like 80-20, North should win this. And they did. Now just win on Good Friday. And I also completely understood the ending struggles. First, you just got to learn how to put enough points up to win. Then you're going to learn how to better close out games. This is kind of the progression that you want, where you get a full oval showing for the better part of 3 quarters, and there's still a lot to learn about tidying things up and pacing yourselves properly. That's how a young list ought to be going.
I think part of it was like, look, they probably just haven't practiced those scenarios enough yet. Part of it was they had probably run out of steam, and part of it was just they probably did a little too much trying to sit on things instead of, take an occasional chance there and maybe, you figure out a way to get one against the run of play. But again, like you had said, those are things that come as you develop more towards an actual contending team. When just the idea of making finals becomes like a possibility, those are the sort of scenarios you need to go over. Richmond a couple weeks ago against GWS is even earlier on in their process towards creating that,
I also feel a bit vindicated in a couple other things I've said about North, in that you're starting to see enough depth in the middle that you can move Jai Sipkin out more. Still had his 18 disposals of 3 clearances, but was flexed away from the stoppages at times. And despite a decent contested load, he stayed pretty clean. And I also wonder if Luke Parker's contest success opened up games for the likes of Simpkin and Davies-Uniacke.
Carleton just had a lot of bad turnovers in this game. Mitch McGovern played fine forward, but the whole defense struggled in turn.
Fine. I mean, he did kick 4, but he totally botched the handling of the first 2.
Yeah, and a couple of them were late and not of great significance.
I was waiting for him to be moved back and for something to be switched up there. I wasn't sure what exactly it was, if you're going to try and push Silvani down the field instead, but nothing.
I would probably have done that because Silvani hadn't defended that well in this game and has shown the ability to go forward. But I also, looking at this, I think this game and just when Carlton's been good versus bad has emphasized Nick Haynes might be one of the indicators for this team, which is kind of crazy to think. And then Alex Chinkata, they put him on Caleb Daniel to start, and then he eventually switched to Colby McKercher in the second half. Now, I guess I understand the idea of putting him on Caleb Daniel. The idea is, okay, we can force Daniel into some bad turnovers, except here's the thing, you can get some bad Caleb Daniel turnovers without really trying. It seems like they could have made better use of that.
The fact that the game plan, other than that, was really stagnant is what irks me as a fan of Australian rules football. That the reason Carlton ended up getting into the game wasn't because of better coaching moves or anything. It was just tiredness and inexperience in those situations from the other side. If the Blues lose Thursday, do you believe Michael Voss gets fired?
I get the feeling it wouldn't happen until the season's over or till they're mathematically out of it.
I don't think it would happen that soon either, but it's definitely more of a conversation than it was. It's to the point where I would no longer be surprised if the move were made in season. I was thinking about this also because our friend Rick asked me about it. I was going back and forth with him. Rick Shabani from our fantasy league, who is a big Giants fan. We'll get to the Giants, I promise.
Two other quick things that I liked for North. Nick Larkey, Jacob Wiedering did a good job keeping him from really just being the deepest forward and impacting things down there, but he managed to kind of Calcher-Deer it. Basically, he just kept impacting the game elsewhere, getting involved in aerial contests, even if he wasn't the one marking. He was just creating deflections and preventing intercept marks and playing that full field role. And then I've really grown to like Jacob Constanti this year. I don't know if he's going to be, when North plan to contend, if he's going to be a real part of the equation. Maybe he'll be a fringe guy at that point. But he definitely adds toughness and has proven that he was worthy of AFL games. And between this and the Freo game the week earlier, looking at that, it's like, man, that's a depth guy Sydney could really use right now, huh? A good team has a player like Jacob Constanti somewhere between, I don't know, the 17th and 30th best player on their list.
Which means he's in a very good spot for North right now.
Also, the worst thing ever happened during the broadcast of this game.
Which was?
They showed a kid crying. You can't show a child crying on the broadcast.
There's definitely a more conservative idea of media sensitivity and all that in Australia than there is in America. I get not wanting to make memes out of it, but even I could draw the parallel.
No, I think it was hilarious. It's like the crying Duke kid.
Hopefully it's something that kid can laugh about if they see it later in life.
Look, the kid from the Nevermind album cover turned out just fine. So I am not one to come in and tell other countries how to do their things. But some of the sensitivity that Australians have over things being shown in media, there were a few weeks ago, people were mad that a reporter acknowledged there was a medical episode at the G during a game in the second level. And that they showed this far off photo of the cleared out section. Hello? Are you fucking kidding me?
Your job is to report.
Yeah. I do agree that maybe we should just put children in full burqas so that, nobody ever sees them on TV. Actually, you know what? Don't show anyone, because everyone was a child once. I was once a child. I was born at a very young age.
You know what? Nobody gets any rights. Australia.
Before we break, I think is a great time for a segment that we haven't done in a couple weeks.
Yes, it's going to be the part where we talk about the NRL. Which includes State of Origin and maybe some other rugby things in there too. So I watched Origin Game 2 live because it was on FS2. I mean, I'm used to being up early for games, and this was on a Wednesday, so it's not crazy. Go the Maroons. As for why that is, I got multiple former classmates, particularly from high school, who are living back in Queensland now. And also, fuck Spencer Leniu. It felt like a collapse until it wasn't.
I slept through some of this, but it was entertaining.
It was one of the most intense rugby league games I've seen though far from the best played. Success for Cameron Munster as captain. That call worked. I still prefer rugby union strongly, but when you got as intense a game as this and with this kind of drama, it's hard to look away. And I'm starting to understand like where the real player of the match stuff comes in, although I personally thought Kurt Capewell had the best game rather than Cam Munster. Can't be mad either way.
I watched the end of the game between the Storm and Rabbitohs the other night, which went to Golden Point. I've talked about Golden Point before, and I'm going to talk about it again. I think it's dumb. And I think it's dumb because in rugby league, you pretty much never kick a field goal. That is the term, right? Field goal?
Drop goal, I think.
But then all of a sudden you sometimes do it to win the game. That is stupid. You look at every other sport and their overtime play, it may be a condensed version of the game, but it's not fundamentally different.
When I think about like drop goal situations, it tends to be in, like the final 5 to 10 minutes there. I think of like Cooper Cronk's famous one in an Origin decider that might have been 2012, I think. The real question is like, how do you fix it? Because they're going to go for drop goals either way if you go to Golden Point, I think. The solution is to not make it sudden death, probably.
No, the solution, I think, would be to just like shrink the field. Just be like, all right, to score a try, you have to just get to like, instead of the goal line, the 20-meter line or something, or the 10-meter line.
I'm sorry, that's even fucking stupider.
No, because it's more like college football OT, where you're basically just playing on a shorter field. Like even the abomination that is the runner on second rule in extra innings, you're still playing baseball fundamentally the same way. You're not fundamentally playing rugby league the same way in Golden Point.
I honestly think that the main solution is to just have a full 10 minutes of extra time.
No, I think just make it win by 2 or full extra time.
Win by 2. That's not one that I thought of. Like you could call it the tennis rule. Yeah, that's interesting. I hadn't thought about that, but that does more to disincentivize just going for drop goals while still punishing penalties. So that's something interesting there. And everybody just probably just listening to us right now, like, what the fuck are these seppos thinking? But other drama in the NRL this week, it was nice to see that they had another game in Perth over at HBF Park, a late win for Newcastle, and Brisbane coming back from 2 16-point deficits to take down Cronulla. And no, Reece Walsh did not get injured. In fact, there was like a scare a bit pregame over his PCL, best player of the second half.
A PCL injury does not fit with my perception of Reece Walsh. I think of him as having like bizarre or very violent injuries, like, his vocal cords somehow end up like in his pelvis, or his gallbladder gets like turned inside out. He doesn't have normal injuries. It's kind of like Mason Cox, actually. Mason Cox has had a career of really weird injuries too.
While we're talking about rugby, perhaps I also want to make this a section where we talk a bit about rugby union, because the Crusaders did it again. Like, this is fucking ridiculous. 13 championships and 17 finals appearances in 28 seasons. That's honestly insane. Like, I don't know what to do to counter this, but just well done to the Crusaders for continuing to win. And vamos Pumas. Argentina taking down the Lions in their send-off game in Dublin, which also brings the discussion back to the AFL. Why again did they schedule 5 games in Victoria the week that the Lions come in?
That is poor scheduling. Now, after the way the field looked in Perth the other night, from a rainy Origin game to perfectly fine for an AFL game the next night where it rained some too, I'm not concerned about it. It's still just like, from a crowd standpoint, this seems kind of silly.
Still having a Thursday game at the G, I get it. That one should draw very well. It's the Hawks and Blues. But loading the schedule after that and having a Saturday night game that goes right up against the Lions?
If you thought that the crowd from one would bleed into the other and help, I don't really think so. Maybe you make it where there's like 1 or 2 games in town for the weekend, and you put them like, have the Thursday or Friday game and then
one Sunday game at Marvel.
If even that much. Just like 2 out of the 3 of Thursday, Friday, Sunday, with Saturday going to the Lions. And then maybe some of the people to come in town for that go Thursday or Friday or Sunday. But yeah, this seemed just like not the best scheduling. And I will not be able to tell you all that much about how it affects crowd things because I will be at that Thursday game. I have tickets, by the way. I've gotten tickets out of the way for all of the games that'll be better attended, except for the Eagles game.
But that Saturday, you're going to be at Showdown.
Yes, and the night before, I'm going to be at Sydney Derby.
Yeah, he's going to do a fair amount of state hopping. We've got that schedule on Twitter and Instagram. I know it's pinned on one, and if it isn't on the other, we'll make that happen again soon.
You know, Benjamin, 78% of our listeners are between 18 and 35 years old, so they probably want to start a podcast like we did.
How did you know that number, Ethan?
Thanks to the analytics we have for Spotify for Podcasters.
Formerly known as Anchor, sorry Frio fans, Spotify for Podcasters has tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast from your phone or your computer. No fancy software needed. It's so easy you can edit it while drunk. And Spotify for Podcasters doesn't just allow you to upload to Spotify, you can also distribute your podcast on platforms like Apple, Stitcher, and more, just like we do. Best of all, it's completely free. Not only is it free, you can even make money from listener support or ad revenue. Hint, hint.
Download the Spotify for Podcasters app or go to podcasters.spotify.com to get started today.
Welcome back to Americans Watching the Footy. This is episode 246. I've said this before, we've had enough episodes that I have to check on this sometimes, which I think is pretty cool.
Nah, that's fun. Who are you?
I'm Ethan Castle. I'm on Twitter at Castle Media.
I'm Benjamin Castle at BenjaminHK01. Yes, Castle is spelled with a K. And we're collectively on Twitter as well as Instagram and YouTube at Americans Footy. Waiting for somebody to impersonate us. And how's the executive producer?
Just sleeping on the bed.
His name is Brian.
Middle name is Harambe.
It's like an Albus Severus thing, yeah?
Yeah, I named him after the 2 bravest people I know. You know, my favorite version of that, of course, is Squidward Channing Tatum.
4 more games to get through. I have a feeling this is going to be one of our longer episodes because we took a good amount of time talking about other sports and fun things as well.
These last few games we're probably going to run through.
3 of the 4 maybe, starting with Port Adelaide 7-10-52 being defeated by the Sydney Swans 9-17-71. Welcome back, Errol Golden, Tom Papley, Matt Roberts. Yeah, I guess Joel Amartey as well.
Golden coming back was obviously significant, but he wasn't really the one who I thought transformed this game. I thought the biggest thing was that we got the version of Justin McInerney we had seen last year, plus probably the most captainly game Callan Mills has captained in I don't know how long.
Well, he'd been out for a while that we'd kind of forgotten what good Captain Callum Mills was like. And yeah, this was refreshing on all fronts. Golden's delivery did matter early on when there was a struggle to get anything shaped properly otherwise. But as the game progressed, it was Mills and McInerney who were among the strongest movers. Mills finished with 27 and 8 marks. McInerney, 22. Mills was positioning himself really well, I think. He was involved a lot off of the first contest and then just anticipating space really well defensively also. 6 intercepts for him, which was the most on the Swans and the most for anyone outside of Esava Radagolea. Now, the Swans could have had this game blown out much further. They went 1-6 in 2 different quarters, and expected score had them winning by about 45. That would have felt much more appropriate because there was never a point where the Swans' control on this game was really doubted, I'd say. Despite this being in Adelaide.
Yeah, this seems to really further Port's slip into irrelevance, and I think with the remaining schedule they've got, I think this does help prove that the Swans, as they're getting healthier, are still, even if they're not going to be what they were last year, I think they still have more of a shot than a lot of the other teams that are outside of the 8 right now. I don't think it's just a 9-team race.
Well, that was win number
6.
Woo!
And we think 13 is the right number still. 14 is absolutely no doubt. We talked about it in the progress report. Go back and listen to that. Like, outside of the trip to the GABA, there's no margin for error. But if nothing else, this Swans team will end up probably playing spoiler to someone because they have that skill. We know that they have the raw skill. And it all clicked in this game. The ceiling was there aside from the goal accuracy. But who did have 3 goals was Will Hayward. And I keep talking about him as being a barometer for the Swans. You know, I'm looking for goal-kicking barometers in a post-Gary Rowan society. And Will Hayward offers himself as a good candidate because since the start of 2021, when Hayward has kicked at least 3 goals, Sydney are 14-3.
Early on, McInerney was on fire. You saw Nick Blakey's burst on display.
Lizard runs, trademark pending.
Second half, Isaac Heaney really got going.
Yeah, sloppy start for him, but cleaned up otherwise. And the Swans, again, controlled territory throughout. It started from Golden, but it spread to the rest of the team. The way this game was played from the outset, it was kind of like Port chaos against Sydney control. It was how I thought it looked like each team wanted it.
Chaos control.
And the Swans control won out. Really, like, the only one to disrupt things was Zach Butters, who was probably Port's best. Sam Powell-Pepper was kind of a bull in a china shop again. And I will credit Joe Richards for showing some smarts with the ball and doing small things well. It's not anything that's going to get him anything close to Brownlow votes, but showing his utility and why he's a good piece for Port to have. But the Power had big problems with contests early. They managed to turn around for a little bit of the second quarter, then it fell off again. And all in all, it led to Port's lowest halftime score since round 7 of 2022. Do you remember anything about round 7 of 2022?
That was not the D's game in wet.
The D's game was round 4 on a Thursday. That was on where we were like super pissed off at Butters for like giving up a reversal and smiling at the end of the half. No, this was 3 weeks later.
I just looked. It was Cairns.
I was going to say it wasn't just wet. That was Robbie Gray winning with a behind. You're telling me that Port hadn't scored as low as this in the first half since Cairns on a perfectly good midwinter day, like clear, no concern with ball control at all. Yikes. And again, we see the flashes from Butters, Rosie, Horn Francis, who got open a decent amount but didn't convert much.
I thought Zach Butters was as good as anyone in this game, pretty much, and got almost no help.
The help wasn't consistent. Willie Rioli popped up for a good third quarter. Richards' impact was on smaller things. I mentioned Powell-Pepper, but the way he plays just isn't going to be the type to really help Butters do a lot. Other real surprise for this game was, Mitch Georgiadis largely being quieted by Tom McCartan? You've given McCartan a lot more credit than I have, I think, for his defensive play. I think a lot of the perception of him has just been denatured by his forward stint, which completely backfired.
I believe that McCartan is, probably in that next tier below, like, Cal Wilkie of defenders, because the top tiers, we've said Harris Andrews and Sam Taylor, Cal Wilkie and maybe still Tom Stewart, that next tier, but I would like comfortably put McCartan in the solid tier after that.
Where's Asava?
Ask me in 5 minutes and it'll change.
Asava is Asava, and
he's his own thing.
He had a decent game again, maybe, because the commentators believe Joel Amartey won that battle of the air against Radagalea, and I can understand why. Amartey, at first, he thought, it's just shaking off rust. He's going to get around to it. No, unfortunately.
No, he was just outwardly bad.
I think he had a compass, but there must have been like another magnet right nearby that was fucking it up.
I'm going to talk about wayward forward kicking and stuff when we get over to the Gold Coast GWS game. So I'll save my greater thoughts on that. I want to congratulate Sydney on doing something that Collingwood had done twice this year, the premature song.
Yeah, it's not just a Pies thing, actually. This was, who even had the shot at the end?
Joe Richards apparently got taken high by Matt Roberts, which nobody seemed to realize until after the song had started. And then he got this meaningless goal after the siren. Port deserved to have their score in the 40s, though. They did not deserve to get to 52.
Expected score said 59, but I'm going to agree with you. It felt to me like an 85-40 game rather than 71-52. I wish I had more positive things to say, but this is just one game for them. More tests coming up, obviously, because this is the minor premiers from last year. It's never going to be easy for them. Game on against the Bulldogs. Tom McCartan versus Sam Darcy. Cracks knuckles.
I thought Port had some of the pieces there to put together a good game between some of what Asava did, Butters, obviously. I thought despite a quiet fourth quarter, Jason Horn-Francis
Here he is again, the horny one.
did a really good job just like getting open. And it was one of those games where having high uncontested numbers versus contested was not a lack of seeking out contests. It was more a reflection on his ability to get open. And I don't know if they underutilized him or if it was just like the sequences where they were trying to get him involved just didn't amount to much. But like I felt like just more could have come out of what he had brought to the table. Real quick, wanted to get your thoughts on the substitution. Port took out Jordan Sweet. They had started this game with two rucks, with Sweet and Dante Vicentini, ended up pulling Sweet. The broadcast team thought Sweet was the better matchup for Grundy size-wise. I like what Vicentini offered. What did you think about that?
I believe in the fourth quarter, one of the commentators ended up saying, I think they subbed out the wrong ruck.
Yes, that's exactly what the thing I was referring to.
Yeah, that's an experience and body type thing. I get you're looking for greater mobility at that point of the game, and Finlayson is a decent tactical option for that. I'm glad Vicentini was backed in, but I do believe that the incorrect call was made.
I mean, I like what Vicentini offers more across the oval, so I get why they did it.
Collingwood 16-12, 108, defeating St Kilda 11-8-74.
For 3.5 quarters, the Saints were in this game, and then Collingwood pulled away late.
Nick Dacos with a fabulous closeout effort. Like, there are no players who are like absolutely dedicated closers in footy, just because you don't have that type unless you have like a designated sub who can do that, and maybe the Orange team has that now, but he had a great goal through a Marcus Windhager tackle, then an assist for Brody Majacek, and he just took over the game for enough minutes and had enough proper connections by foot to ice this game in Collingwood's favor, and that's what the best players have to do. So, as much as it's sometimes just easy to say Collingwood and Dacos 3 votes, there's reason for it in this one. And yet,
he did not get the perfect 10 from the coaches. Darcy Cameron did. And now I thought Darcy Cameron was good.
I thought Cameron got into Rowan Marshall's head really early and stayed there for most of the game. I thought Marshall also had a bit of a fight back, like late third through part of the fourth. So I didn't think Cameron, was the one who completely dictated the game. I get having him, in your round low votes, but I thought Nick did more to actively win the game. Cameron, a lot of his impact was very early with 2 goals. It was very clear to me, though, that this was the type of matchup where Darcy Cameron would succeed. Collingwood just, in general, played to their forward half strength. They got deeper intercepts as the likes of Darcy Moore and Darcy Cameron pushed downfield, and their forward connection was better, too. Nick was a huge part of that, as was Pat Lipinski, who had 2 goals, plenty of involvement by hand and foot, one of his most active games yet, and in the process, quieted Jack Sinclair. I hope Lipinski doesn't go under the radar for this game because he often does. It's just kind of the nature of his game, I think. But 2 goals from 26, 9 marks, 5 tackles, and a game-high 10 score involvements. This was one of his most active and most complete games, and it came in a matchup against someone who's regularly regarded as one of the most active halfbacks. Not a great defender by any means, but a ball mover, yes. And to keep him occupied like he did, to limit Sinclair's involvement to 19 with not a lot of oomph behind it, that takes skill. You look at Sinclair for engineering some of the rebounds along with Nazaya. Nazaya had 9. He got plenty in the ball. Sinclair had 7, but I didn't think his were as effective. Didn't do as much getting the ground balls because of Lipinski's pressure.
It's funny, during the progress reports, I said that I think Sinclair kind of gets overhyped by champion data. And then he came out and was one of the few Saints that really brought it in that loss to the Dogs. And in this game, he was definitely quieted. Lipinski, just like...
I don't think there are many players who get put directly on him for as steadily as Lipinski was in this game, but this was completely worth it. And I think it's a game plan that's replicable enough that you ought to see other teams trying it, perhaps as early as this round for Frio. Who would that player be for Frio?
I would say Switkowski, but he's hurt.
Is this where you bring Bailey Banfield into a defensive forward role?
I don't hate that idea.
Banfield has been having more time as a halfback flank, and he's done well enough there, but we know his forward skill too, and I think you need to keep Matthew Johnson there on the wing, so I would task Banfield with sticking with Sinclair.
Let's talk real quick about the fact that Nick Dacos worked his way through the Marcus Windhager tag.
Marcus Windhager should not have been fined. That's a fucking joke.
Yeah, that was ridiculous. This was an open hand slap to the chest.
Unless there's another strike that we didn't see.
No, the one that was in question for the fine was the open hand slap to the chest.
This is what happens when a Collingwood Premiership player runs the shit. Greg Swan, get Michael Christian the fuck out of our league. It also makes sense as to why Carlton get off from so many things. It might not be because their lawyers are good. It's because a Collingwood Premiership player just gives them all these shit suspensions. But enough about the Blues. They lost to North. Yes, Nick worked through a Windhager tag to be as prominent as he was. And I know that there are questions about whether or not Windhager's tags are consistently effective.
Most of them have been.
It takes a good enough player, though, to be able to not just work through a tag, but to not get rattled by it. Glad we highlighted the ways in which Nick succeeded, along with Lipinski, Cameron. Scott Pendlebury also set the tone early with both marking and kicking. This guy's not going to age, is he? Are we going to see 450 Pendlebury?
Once again, Jack Crisp was really solid on a per-touch basis. It is amazing what he's done. Not all that long removed from getting dropped to the sub role. Remember that?
I want to say it was Holy Thursday because I think it was against Brisbane. What a motivated guy, making the sub against his old side. Happened once this week, actually, with Zach Fisher. I'm not going to completely dunk on the Saints here because, again, they stuck with this game for, 3.5 quarters?
Yeah, they got beat by a better team.
They did have a couple misses in the second quarter standing out. Well, 3 actually. 2 from Mitch Owens and 1 from Mason Wood, who was more getting on the end of passages, whereas Cooper Sharman did more full field and a bit of setup. Darcy Wilson, I'll say, looks like himself again after putting himself on notice and having a week in the VFL. That was refreshing because he was one of the better first-year players last year and just hadn't been with it in his outside wing to half forward role. He was more like his 2024 self, and part of the Saints staying better on ground balls for a decent portion of the game. But this was one of the quietest games from Jack Higgins, and that definitely hurt.
Jack McRae had his typical surface numbers, 29 disposals, 10 clearances, 6 tackles, but Collingwood were able to limit him to really just making an impact there until late in the game. I think he was at 4 score involvements and 2 intercepts, finished with 6 and 3, which if you're limiting him, even with double-digit clearances and nearly 30 disposals to 6 score involvements and 3 intercepts, you've done your job minimizing his impact as best you can. We've seen this with other players as well. Who is it last week or the week earlier that had insane clearance numbers that didn't lead to anything? You know what? I think it was Will Ashcroft from that game at Adelaide. He got limited to 4 score involvements and 2 intercepts, even though he was 8 clearances, 7 tackles, 31 disposals. That's the one I was thinking of, where they managed to limit his impact to immediately off stop. And same with Lachie Neale in that game.
Let's finish, though, by looking at defense. For the Saints, solid game 1 for Alex Taru. Not completely lighting up the plays. Tim Membry did beat him for 1 early, and, Membry had his 2 against his old side. But Taru looked like he belonged there. 6 spoils for him, kind of working in tandem with Anthony Caminiti, whose 9 led the way. Still got some growing to do, if not physically, definitely just kind of mentally and maturing, but to already be that with it for a full AFL game in not a super tall back group is solid. I look forward to watching him further.
I want to be friends with this family. I love that they were all in on the Viking bit. And then I just continue to really like Max Hall on a per touch basis. I feel like he could be one of those dudes who gets down ballot coaches votes all the time and isn't ever going to be like, I can't imagine him as the player he is now, and maybe it changes as he evolves. But as of now, I can't ever imagine him getting 2 or 3 Brownlow votes, but I could see him getting 1. You look at the surface numbers, a goal and a behind from 12 disposals, whatever. But then you do a little digging. Out of those 12 disposals, 9 contested, over 90% efficiency, 7 score involvements, 3 intercepts, and Champion Data actually had him as the top-rated Saint on the ground, and I totally agree with that.
Even with the love they give to Rucks and Rowan Marshall, 16 hitouts to advantage. That's something if you're rating above a ruck like that. And in defense for Collingwood, you say starts in defense still up. Harry Perryman is another one of those high impact per touch guys, which is not how I remembered him.
No, at GWS, he was a volume guy completely. He has transitioned from quantity to quality, and I really like that. And I think you could make some sort of, broader conclusion about, how this represents the Collingwood way and, playing within the team and all of that. But just on an individual level, even if you don't get into some of the narratives and stuff, I just really appreciate the way he's been able to adapt to a totally different style and a completely different role and find a way to make himself useful, because that is not easy to do. GWS 16-10-106 defeated Gold Coast 14-15-99. I love that while the Expansion Cup is totally a meme, it was a great game, one of the more fun games we've had this year, and not just because the Giants came storming back. I'm not just always a believer that high scoring equals better, but this was a fun high scoring, like first quarter especially, because while there were a lot of scores, 11 goals and all, there were some really difficult goals pulled off.
This is not the game that you would show somebody right away because it's a bit more high scoring, but this would be like,
also because there was, 10,000 is better than it looked, but there were not a lot of people there.
We've talked about what is best for that first game, looking for the average, nothing crazy in the end.
Above average, 70th, 80th percentile.
Yeah, like what we said was when we showed Ethan's friend Derek, it was Port versus Melbourne from early last year. We talked about Brisbane versus Essendon from round 12 this year being a decent candidate for its kind of up and down nature and, still not being crazy high scoring. This is one that is great for showing the huge swings possible in this sport, and one that I'd maybe consider for like second or third up.
This really felt like a game that on a lot of fronts, the Suns should have won. They did win on expected score by about 3 goals. They could have had a lot more than the 7 goals they kicked in the first quarter, considering it was 7-6. In the third quarter, they kicked 3-5.
They had every reason to have this game won by quarter time and by 3/4 time.
And they had some great individual performances. Noah Anderson continues to put together a monster year. Tuke Miller was great. Bailey Humphrey, once again, excellent at ground level. And I actually loved some of their depth pieces in this game, specifically Braden Fiorini and Ben Ainsworth.
Ainsworth, well, with one exception.
With one important miss? Or was it a turnover?
Neither. So the Suns had a 23-point lead at quarter time. Really, that should have been 34.
Oh, yes.
After what happened with Ainsworth, Jed Walter had this point-blank miss where he just did not run up at all and just like...
Which was really funny because Jed Walter gets worse calls his way than Charlie Curnow. Now, this one was correct, but there was one earlier that wasn't, so it kind of offset that.
But no, this was the Ainsworth one.
This is not the most ridiculous 50-meter penalty the Suns have given away this year. That's the best part.
Remind us of the other one in a second here, but after Toby Green centered a ball to Jesse Hogan, Hogan's kind of shuffling as he normally does, and you hear somebody say play on twice. And that kind of first catches your attention because umpires usually say play on just once. Then it became very clear, actually it was very clear right away, wait a minute, this wasn't an umpire. This wasn't like directly on a mic. It was like just off it. Ben Ainsworth was saying play on. It caused Mac Andrew to charge at Hogan. 50 easy goal for the reigning Coleman medalist.
I mean, Hogan might have that goal anyway, but it was pretty silly. Not as silly as Bailey Humphrey throwing the grass.
Oh my gosh, yes.
But it was pretty dumb. Like, you've got to say either, hey, he's playing on, or he just played on or something, not just play on. That's just stupid.
Saying play on or anything similar is not right. Just like, I'd say like, he's off his mark.
It was that and some of the other sloppy misses and bad turnovers and just a lack of discipline in general that held the Suns back in this game and has held them back in some of their other close losses as well. And it's where this team hasn't taken that next step on the road. I put the Suns and the Crows in this same category. I was thinking about this last night.
You expect them to win and take care of business as they should at home, but they haven't found road consistency. Having said that,
I want to see that we demand to be taken seriously win. Like this and the Hawthorn win at the G were both that for Brisbane. I think for Geelong, that win, the Collingwood win, the Hawthorn win, and the win at Adelaide all count for that. It's got to be either a big out-of-state win if you're an interstate team, or if you're a Victorian team, you know, a big win over another Victorian team. Like, still waiting on that for the Bulldogs, I think you could say.
The Suns have 2 trips to the Adelaide Oval coming up. Adelaide round 19 is the one you'd really circle.
Look, the home win over Collingwood would do a lot, but I really think winning at Adelaide or beating Carlton at Marvel, one of those two would really do it. I think the Adelaide one especially is the biggest opportunity because, look, we've seen what this team can do at home. We've seen what they can do on the road against lesser teams. Against better teams, though, we still got to see more. It was that big run in the fourth quarter where the Giants took control. Jake Stringer, who got subbed in for Lachie Whitfield.
After Whitfield got concussed, unfortunately.
Ben King is fine. He was not fined. He is fine, which kind of surprised me. I thought there was going to be something to answer for. I mean, I thought it was in that gray area, and then because of a concussion, you expect them to automatically err on the side of that.
I think since we saw the Tom Stewart bump, we're kind of getting some more of the right decisions where they're really checking for the point of contact on bumps and making sure, you know, players can still be physical as long as there's not impact with the head.
I mean, there was, but Whitfield had lowered himself into it and kind of helped initiate it, where I don't think King really had, like, reasonable time to react and adjust to avoid Whitfield's head.
If you are first to the ball and or are making contact with the shoulder, what would you'd expect to be the shoulder before a guy lowers himself, then you ought to be in the clear. And both those were true for Ben King. So I think that's correct there. But yeah,
also this is a case where the fact that he's significantly taller does have an impact on this.
But as we were saying about Jake Stringer, this is probably the best super sub performance yet this year with 2 very difficult package goals.
There was another sub performance that was really good a few weeks ago. I know Cooper Lords had a couple. Robert Hansen Jr. actually was really sharp in that Bunbury game. That was another, but there was something that was bigger than that, and I'm trying to remember it.
Not sure. But Stringer, I don't think there was anything that surprised us about where he was playing. Aggressive from half forward, willing to go to the flanks and just play pretty laterally because he's got the good finishing ability still. But the Giants' good trends started more so in the second quarter. Their vision was better, but they just weren't clean enough at that time to make things happen. I could tell very early on the answer for the Giants was going to be, you know, getting the tsunami going, using Finn Callahan's speed and long kicks, and getting Josh Kelly involved enough to make that happen.
Kelly was not clean enough earlier in this game, and he got better, but I thought it was the 2 biggest things for me in that fourth quarter surge were Callahan's ability to stretch the field, and then Harvey Thomas just making winning play after winning play. He had a chase down tackle on Matt Rowell in the fourth quarter when it was only a 2-point game.
This guy is a high ceiling player, and for him to work his way into a game like that is what impresses me, because his start was not great, but he finished with a goal and assist from 12 and 6 tackles, fits into that Giants speed and pressure style quite well. The best 19-year-old in the round, because I just checked, and Logan Morris turned 20 about a month ago, and I'm glad you credited him alongside Callahan. But there's also, another name that we're really, really missing here in terms of movement.
Well, I wanted to say one more thing about Harvey Thomas. He is on that list for me with Ollie Dempsey of guys that I just believe in the fourth quarter.
That's high praise. He didn't even have the ball much in the fourth.
But the pressure was huge.
The pressure was the big thing. Yeah, he did have 2 intercepts in the fourth. And I think that was where he got his 2 disposals from. But just the third quarter was the big one for him. That was where he had his goal from 6. And then Tom Green, we know what he can do, just being a raw clearance player. But this was a case where he actually had the cleanliness and the clutch, just everything going together there to drive the midfield, drive the comeback in the fourth quarter. Because without him making his plays, there's no chance that Aaron Cadman gets the deliveries that he does, for example.
The biggest thing I thought with Green was through 2.5, 3 quarters, he had been good in clearance, but nothing was kind of translating to elsewhere. Similar to the game Zach Butters had a night earlier. And in the fourth quarter, his clearances actually turned into scores. He's been in ridiculous form over the last month or so, where he's getting the clearances like he always did. And now he's also just playing a lot cleaner instead of just blindly yeeting it.
Oh, yeah, and Cadman with 3, Hogan and Alan Brown, who was a 4 with 2 each.
So yes, when you forward is alive and well, brother.
They don't need to every week. You can have Jake Riccardo as Riccardo was one of the few Giants who was good early with a couple goals, and he stuck with play.
Yeah, this was 27-0 early, and it probably should have been 32-0. Ben Long had a bad early miss, which, Ben Long played a perfectly fine game. I don't think he deserves a lot of criticism, per se, but just one of those moments that when you go back, if you're the Suns, and you pick out 5 moments and say, if we take care of our shit on 2 or 3 of these, we win this game.
And otherwise, Long had been one of the sharp starters, outside the direct midfield battles. Bailey Humphrey was there also. It was no surprise that Noah Anderson was leading the way. And even before that, the Jared Witz was just manhandling Nick Madden. That mismatch just highlighted the Giants' clearance concerns, which they
basically
managed to...
Tom Green was the only one who could get a clearance. Although I do think Madden made some big plays in the fourth quarter and did enough to kind of the dam had burst and he was able to kind of reconstruct enough there to not let it get out of control late. He was able to regain enough control to give his team a shot.
Yeah, the Giants were -5 on clearances for the game, and they only had 1 player with more than 5 clearances.
And for most of the game, the numbers were a lot worse.
Yeah, that player was Tom Green with 16.
Wow!
He didn't win this game on his own, but he started most of the successful passages that allowed that fourth quarter comeback to happen.
I know you'll get a kick out of this. The free kick count for the game, well, it was 7-3 GWS for the fourth quarter, but for the game it was 24-15, which means if you do some quick maths, it was 21-8 at three-quarter time.
21-8, that's like high school football score.
Yes, I've been to games with that exact score.
I wasn't even trying to do that, but wow, it actually isn't that crazy. Those are attainable scores. Players that we haven't highlighted yet for the Giants, I thought Lecalier might have been a bit out of depth, but that just means Jack Buckley had to play a bigger role, and outside the first few minutes, he led that defense really well. Yeah, Ben King and Jed Walter are going to get a couple, but the tall matchups overall held up for the Giants, and I was questioning how much they were going to miss Sam Taylor and that this might be a game where that really hurt. They weathered that storm, so...
Look, Jack Buckley is really solid, and if he wasn't number 2 to Sam Taylor, I think he'd get a lot more of the credit. I think Jack Buckley is a better number 2 defender than Jack Payne, if we're talking about number 2 defenders overshadowed by a great number 1 defender. I think Jack Buckley would be a number 1 defender on a lot of teams.
I see it more with Buckley than I do with Payne, as much as I love Jack Payne. And then Harry Himmelberg took on more of a full field role, even with the Taylor out, and he grew into the game as well. Most of the Giants players grew into this game, and Himmelberg was one of the main ones. Like, the only ones who were really on for the beginning for GWS were, Riccardi and Callahan?
Green, I would even say Callahan less so than Riccardi. I would probably say Riccardi and Green.
And the fact that they had a poor start like that and managed to come back makes this an even more satisfying win.
I mean, this is not the first time they've done that.
No, wasn't it like the heat wave at Adelaide round 1 last year? Or was that 2023?
That was 23, I think.
I think, that one had another prominent fourth quarter comeback.
Look, they also had an awful start, really a bad 3 quarters of that Richmond game a few weeks ago.
They're good closers at home. Let's see it happen on the road.
Well, at their second home, they've done it. I believe this is the 4th time this year they've lost a game on expected score and won.
That's beautiful.
Because what? They did it last week. They did it at Geelong. They did it to Richmond. And I've been thinking about this. There is something to be said about converting your set shots, and there is skill to that. But your opponent's regularly underperforming their expected score. You could dig into this and you could think, what is there to it? And I don't think there's a lot to do with the shots that they're getting. I don't think, there's anything to do with standing the mark. It's not like there's been extraordinary win, but there is clearly something at play that is causing GWS's opponents to just miss kicks. And I was thinking about this, and I was thinking maybe they had hired a wizard to put a hex on opposing teams. And then I figured out what it actually is that's leading wayward forwards astray. I was thinking about this for a while. I believe they are employing the power of a siren.
A siren?
Yes, like a mermaid sitting on a rock. Maybe it's singing the Rockford Files theme like Peter Griffin. Maybe it's not. I'm not sure. But I think somewhere out there is a siren that sings to distract opposing forwards when they're trying to kick against GWS, and it pulls their kicks offline. And I was thinking, sirens have long flowing hair, right?
Who is it?
Well, I was thinking, who has ties to GWS, has long hair, and has spent a lot of time trying to stop forwards from kicking goals against GWS.
The secret ingredient is...
Phil Davis is secretly a siren. I think it's Phil Davis.
Okay, so I think the power of a siren is our title, and it's going to be Phil Davis as a mermaid, as the art.
Yeah, just put Phil Davis's head on the Peter Griffin mermaid on the rock.
Oh, it has to be... I'll note that then.
I've given this a lot of thought. This came to me last night, and I was really proud of putting the pieces together and figuring this out on my own.
Well, do you think this siren also has the power to influence other defenders to perform poorly? Because Mac Andrew had a few spoils that were not well placed and resulted in goals. One of the stringer ones was like that. So
no, I think that was just bad luck. It's not like, who was it who had a really dumb decision to spoil this round? I don't think that was Andrew. Someone else, it was a white dude. I remember it being a white dude who spoiled right to somebody in the goal square.
Oh, might have been Anthony Caminiti.
Yeah, I think so.
Where it went straight to Bobby Hill, who won the Battle of the Hill Cousins.
I think in this case, it wasn't like Mac had any that were necessarily, oh, you could have just marked that and you chose to spoil. I think it was more just
poor direction.
Western Bulldogs 21-9-135, defeating Richmond 8-8-56. This kind of went how you'd expect. I said a couple weeks ago when they lost to the Swans. Was that just a week earlier?
It was 2 weeks ago. They had their bye.
Yeah. When Richmond lost to the Swans, it was if you told me at the start of the year this was going to be your average Richmond game, I would have said, yeah. And I think these last couple weeks, between injuries and stuff, they're just, they're playing at the level that we thought they would have at the start of the year instead of the team that picked up 3 wins, 2 of which are legitimately impressive.
This is what happens when, A, you don't tag Marcus Bontempelli, B, you're also going up against Ed Richards, and C, you put the wrong guy on Sam Darcy. And I mean, it might not have mattered had Ben Miller been on Sam Darcy the way Darcy was performing, but it would have been fun to watch. And I take great satisfaction in saying Sam Darcy completely outplayed Noah Balta. And Balta was just lost on multiple occasions as well, and then just outmarked because it's Sam Darcy and he can loss pretty much anybody.
who is your tag if you're going to tag with this Richmond team? Who's doing the tagging?
Yeah, the unfortunate thing there is that the guy I would have wanted to see tag was out for this game, that being Kane McAuliffe.
Yeah, he's got the quad issue. I mean, so of the guys that were there, McIntosh? I don't know.
With how ineffective McIntosh was for much of the game, I wouldn't have minded. I think they tried to make him a tagger early in the year. Just the fact that there was nobody and no space body on Bontempelli for much of the game just means you know you're going to get absolutely run through by him. 3 goals straight from 36, 7 clearances, 4 assists as well, a game high 12 scored involvements. Efficient despite contested splits. Just, it's Bontempelli, all right. And Ed Richards with 7 clearances as well, and a goal and 2 assists from 27. The two work well enough on their own. Having them together with no good opposition, I mean, it does look like training.
I mean, look, Richmond haven't tagged much this year, right?
Aside from McIntosh, no. So you knew it was going to be bad. Like, this is one of the matchups where it felt very obvious that it was going to get ugly. I just wish they tried something rather than just going with, yep, no tag.
I get it because, look, they are at a point where they're less focused on game scenario stuff and more focused on bigger picture things. And I get if they don't want to shoehorn one of their younger players into that role.
At the same time, this is the type of thing where, like, I would want to see who could stand up and tag for a bit.
Yeah, I was just going to say that. And if you don't want to try it on a younger player, you just have McIntosh do it. He's not young. But, like, if Richmond was sitting on 1 win right now, I'd be a lot more disappointed in them.
They've already banked 3, and
they've done their work.
I'm not going to fault them. Again, when you expected that this game was going to be as ugly as it was, and they banked those wins as well. I will fault Richmond for persisting with Tyler Sonzi at half forward. And that's even more of a question as to why they did it with McAuliffe out injured. He is not able to kick straight and has looked better in the reserves in the midfield. He's out of contract, and I hope he goes somewhere where his midfield skills could be nurtured a bit better.
Yeah, I like him, and I like his upside.
I do as well. I just don't think he's being played at the right parts of the oval. The brightest young spot for Richmond in this game might have been Jonty Fall, even though he didn't get on the end of one and only had 2 marks. I kept looking back at Fall and seeing him getting into contests, managed to actually run down Ed Richards for holding the ball at one point.
I know a couple of the Richmond people we follow saw him as a bright spot.
I'm glad I'm not alone there. Otherwise, there wasn't much to take out of this for Richmond because they were overrun pretty quickly. I wish Jasper Alger could have gotten the full game instead of being a sub on debut. That is what it is at this point.
As much as I think you get overly mad over sub debut stuff, when you're in the position Richmond's in, what's the point, right? The final score was misleading. This was 103-26, less than a minute into the fourth. It was 66-10 at halftime. I really haven't watched this closely, and I'm going to have to drag myself through it.
I mean, nice on Richmond to actually play a fourth quarter. They've done that a couple times this year.
At least offensively.
Offensively, to make things look more respectable, where they've actually managed to get some goals late. If you're looking for a polished turd for this game, it's pretty clearly, to me, Nick Flostone.
I saw he had an injury scare at one point with his knee, I think, but he seemed fine, so that's good. Yay.
He landed hard from a contest, I think head and knee both, but yeah, he's fine. 28, 7 marks. The starter of their rebounds, as he usually is. 9 intercepts, 7 rebound 50s. It's a damn shame that he's never been All-Australian and has only been in the extended squad once, because he's been one of the most consistent defenders of...
Yeah, that's kind of amazing.
Yeah, one of the most consistent defenders of the past decade. Again, this game largely went as I expected between Bontempelli and Richards absolutely cooking. Interesting, though, that Sam Darcy was kept in the ruck for, I think, all of the third quarter. Allowed Tim English some forward time, and he converted on a couple goals, had 2 assists as well.
Yeah, I would have thought, if you're the Dogs, I mean, you're concerned about both of their health, but you'd be concerned about Darcy's more.
That's Darcy's more, not Darcy Moore. Wrong team.
And yet you gave Darcy a whole quarter in the Rock against a big bruising presence. I mean, who else could you have let Rory Lobb into that role maybe for a bit or something? I don't know. You could have definitely tried somebody else there.
Luko Kamas, once he came on early because Adam Treloar did his calf again. That's 6 weeks.
Yeah, I actually was thinking that as well, because at that point in the game, if you're the Bulldogs, your priority is like, get out of here without any injuries.
And Book was a pretty versatile player, so I get why he was the sub. I also persist in saying, though, that he belongs in the 22. Aaron Naughton was hardly involved in the first half.
Well, that was also what Ben Miller did, right?
Partially, but Naughton's had a few down weeks in a row. He closed well, if that matters.
That might be one where like you just need to see a couple go through. So there's some value to garbage time for him.
He did get one to go through at the end and had 2 assists, so he stuck with it, got some reward. Good for Naughton for that. Other big highlights for the game for the Bulldogs. Sam Davidson, a goal from 27 and 9 marks. He had a feeling this game meant...
That's what, 2 good games in a row for him.
Yeah, he had a feeling this game meant a bit more to him, considering he came through Richmond's VFL program, got all sorts of uncontested time as an outside mark. We've seen him occupy the wing well, did it again, had 7 marks and 6 score involvements, and his goal in the first half alone. And the other one I'm going to highlight, he's not just a fantasy player for me. He's someone who I've said now for 3 years, y'all need to watch. It's Riley West. And he's done less and less of that defensive forward job this year, but he had early involvements in the forward 50, took a couple pretty impressive marks, and finished up 2-1 from 18 with 6 marks. I'm so glad that the Bulldogs have persisted with him, because there was a fear there that he would just kind of stay on the margins, even though he's the son of one of the club's greats.
Even if you were just watching this casually as I was, his impact was noticeable.
Riley West is now up to 22 goals and 13 assists on the year. His career highs, which were from 21 games last year, were 25 goals and 15 assists. He's getting close to his prime if he hasn't entered it yet as he approaches his 25th birthday. And if the Dogs are going to do something as this Luke Beveridge era runs on, he's going to be a big part of it.
All right, I think it's awards time, yeah?
Yeah, we've been going at this for a while here. I told you this was going to be a longer one. Let's start with Mark of the Week.
Actually, I am going to start with an award that I meant to give out earlier in this episode.
Oh, really?
Yes. In light of their performances over the last couple months, being competitive in pretty much every game since Good Friday, even the Collingwood game, they were really competitive for a half and in it at the end of the third quarter because of Collingwood's inefficiency. I hereby grant the North Melbourne Football Club 1 stinker. They are entitled to absolutely suck ass for a game, no questions asked, and just say, they were due for a crappy one. I hope that's against Geelong, but at some point in the next few weeks, they are entitled to a down game. They have been completely competent and competitive for a prolonged stretch, and if they have a down game, we could just take it in stride and say, all right, it happens. So congratulations, North Melbourne, you have earned yourselves 1 stinker.
I hope it's not this coming week in Launceston.
It totally could be.
I mean, I don't think they have a good track record there at UTAS, so there's that. But yeah, looking at just the pure margins for North, since Good Friday, the only game they've lost by double digits was Collingwood when they fell off late. Otherwise, all of their games one way or another have been within 2 goals, and 3 of those have been wins. We're seeing something here, North, and that's good. Mark of the Week, though. Your round 14 winner was Isaac Cumming. He tipped and marked one-handed, despite Massimo D'Ambrosio locking up his right arm. That was a good one, as was one that Aaron Catman had last week, hanging on Eric Hipwood. Both worthy candidates. Your nominees this week. Thursday, Nate Caddy put his knee into Carl Warner's head and also mossed his second game teammate, Archer May. And then 2 Brisbane Lions took good ones on Friday. Kai Lohman got his right knee to Zach Guthrie's right shoulder, and then Will McLaughlin got a bit of secondary height over Jack Henry. What's your call, Ethan?
I think I'm going to go McLaughlin, but I'm fine with any of these 3. I don't know if any of these make Brownlow night. I don't think so. I think, they'll make their way into a highlight reel of the year's best marks, but I don't think any of them are going to, win you any, big picture awards, but they were all solid.
all good. I could see, Loman and/or McLaughlin making it for the round montage. And Loman had the clean dismount, but I think Caddy might have put in the most work to actually get that done between the leap and the taking it away from his teammate. So I'm going to go narrowly with Nate Caddy, though I wouldn't mind any of these three winning it. Goal of the week last week was Shea Bolton sidestepping Luke Davies-Uniacke and kicking from about 49 meters out. We preferred Ollie Dempsey taking an over-the-back handball from Tyson Stengel and kicking check side, ball that went through on one bounce. This week, we've got Caleb Sarong receiving a Matthew Johnson handball, bouncing. He doesn't do that often.
Bouncing around, bouncing around, bouncing.
He actually had 2 bounces in this game, which brings him up to 4 on the year, and before this year, he had 2 for his entire career.
Hey, he's got 6 more than Max Gawn.
Yeah, after his second bounce, he should have been offered a pay raise. But he kicked from the right corner, pretty much right at the 50-meter line, and went through on the full. You got Tom Green receiving a Harry Rouston handball from just outside 50, sidestepping Daniel Rioli and Lockie Weller and finishing from 35. Now, something else I liked about that sequence was the Jake Stringer kick that Mac Andrew spoiled and then came to Rouston. There's like a really good kick from Stringer, like on his right from the left side. That's really tough to pull off. And even though it didn't get marked, it was a nice kick. And I just wanted to give that some credit. And then Stringer crumbing off of a pack in the right pocket and kicking on one bounce at about a 65-degree angle. I actually liked Stringer's ladder goal more from the left pocket. I think that was my favorite, but all 3 of these were solid. I think Sarong and Stringer are the top 2, and I think I'll lean Stringer here, but I don't have particularly strong opinions about any of these.
I'll take Stringer as well. Tough to split his 2 goals, but Caleb Sarong, you've already won goal of the year. You're fine, man.
I would have liked to see Stringer in twice instead of Tom Green in there. Although the sidestep on the Tom Green one, that was cool.
I think we've had, Harry Himmelberg was nominated for 2 marks a couple years ago. Liam Ryan has been nominated for 2 marks before. It's happened.
Now, what if Arriaga 2 got nominated twice? Then you'd have to see the marks listed as Arriaga 2-1 and Arriaga 2-2.
I think when we saw the ones for Himmelberg, it was Harry Himmelberg round 5 or whatever.
No, but we've had 2 from players in the same game.
Yeah, they had to mark that by quarter. That was fun.
Yeah.
Behind of the week time. Last week it was Mark O'Connor one-timing one into the post off a pack where Reece Stanley had a good attempt at it. There was another one-time volley from Geelong into the post this round, that being Ollie Dempsey after Tom Atkins kicked across the face. But I never saw Dempsey as really having a good opportunity to score. That's why I kind of liked that one. It kind of came out of nowhere. I was like, whoa, he nearly pulled that off. That would have been really cool. I think the greater theater, though, which is why I pushed for this one and we ended up deciding on it, was Shea Bolton for the very first point of the round. After getting a handball from Nat Fife, he had the shot from the deep right boundary, which doinked quite high off the right post. And I think the higher doink also does play a factor, because then there's this suspense on its way there. That's why Jeremy Cameron's from Easter Monday was even more special.
I mean, that one was special regardless. That's the best one this year. Assist of the week, we really have nothing for this round. Last week, it was Jake Melcham's tap over his shoulder back to Kazi Pickett. This week, I love that Stringer kick, but it wasn't even the assist on the play. It got spoiled by Andrew, and then Rouston handed it off. So we're actually going to go with Finn Callahan's kick, just perfectly placed long kick to Aaron Cadman, who was matched up with Sam Collins, and that gave the Giants a lead for good. So we'll go with that. It's something.
Primary assist makes it difficult here, but we've been steady about that. I'm the one really.
I've been wanting to open it up more.
I think you need to get the credit for the goal assist, and so that's where it's been. Worst on round. We had some candidates. Zach Jones took it last week and then was omitted. Jack Martin on Friday did not play well in defense. Had Mitch Duncan not been subbed out, he was tracking as well. That was something I didn't talk about when discussing that game, was just, this was a bad matchup for Duncan. He just looked way too slow and old. Most of our candidates end up being defensive a lot of the time because that's more visible. That's why I like being able to recognize Zach Jones. He was just a midfielder who got his ass kicked. Recognize is a word. I mean, it's correct, just usually has a positive connotation. Sam Doherty had a lot of the ball, was not good with it unless you had him in fantasy. Not gonna lie,
until he got his goal, Brian would have been considered, and kind of wanted to because our worst on round winners have had a pretty good habit of turning it around and then playing really well.
Well, maybe it's a good thing then that we didn't end up going with Noah Balta, who was completely out of position a lot of time and just got outplayed by Sam Darcy. No,
and that's not someone you expect to be out of position. It's one thing to lose a one-on-one to Sam Darcy. That happens. But for Noah Balta, the guy who usually keeps everyone in position to be out of position, was strange. That just seemed like a lack of focus.
Maybe it's someone with like being only able to play like a week or two at a time and constantly having these breaks.
You know what? I want to talk about the silliness of this one more time. So arbitrary. It's like, you know what? He can only play when this constellation is aligned with the sun or something. Or he can only play on a back line with people who don't have the same zodiac sign as him.
I mean, I'm kind of glad that the punishment is what they'd hand down to a civilian. It's just dealt with really weirdly. But no, our worst on round winner for the very first time won his game.
I've pushed for a couple others that should have gotten it in wins, but this week it has to be Joel Amartey.
He scored 6 points, all right, just on 6 behinds. And he alone had an expected score of 30.8.
It was what, 9 shots and he went 06?
8 or 9, either way.
And normally, when a guy does that, we're able to look through it and say, you know, at least he marked well, but this was just some of the misses as the game went on, compounded and cascaded and just got worse and worse to the point that, I mean, you really can't ignore this one. Even though they won, and won comfortably, I don't think there's much disputing this one, yeah?
No. No as in yes, there's no disputing. Yes, no stuff in English is often weird. Main character at last.
Last week, this one was tough.
Last week it was the state of Tasmania. Because
we have not had a great main character lately.
Nah, this one was also tough. I mean, last week it was because of the talk about the roof just being highlighted with the Hawthorn and Adelaide game and some potential progress with talks with cricket authorities. Thank you, David Boone. This week we had a feeling it revolved around Expansion Cup, and I pushed for it, and I think it's right to make it the package, Jake Stringer. Perhaps the most notable substitute performance this year, being the dynamic player that we know Jake Stringer can be. I must say, though, that TNT doesn't seem like a fitting song for him. If he is to be the package, go with Signed, Sealed, Delivered, I'm Yours by Stevie Wonder.
Or Please Mr. Postman or something. Something mail-related, or just a loop of the AOL You've Got Mail. Someone definitely has made like an EDM track with a You've Got Mail drop.
I'll take Message in a Bottle by the Police for similar reasons.
Anything mail-related.
Something with the post.
Something shipping-related. Or the box. There's so many ways you could go with this. And he went with none of them. So that's disappointing.
But he's still the main character, and that is the end of our recap. Yeah, this has gone longer than we thought.
I did just want to make sure, in case it hadn't been discussed yet, I wanted to deliver some news that is definitely not positive, but is relevant. Max King has had knee surgery and is out for the remainder of the season. He will finish the season without playing in a game.
Right, with the Saints having already had their bye, we did need to discuss that. If you're wondering why we haven't talked about Jeremy McGovern, it's because progress reports are still coming for this round, and the Eagles managed to lose the bye. Hey, at least Port Adelaide from 2011 isn't alone anymore. That'll be our next episode. Until then, the conversation continues at Americans Footy on Twitter and Instagram and YouTube. I'm at BenjaminHK01 on Twitter.
Our executive producer is sleeping on the bed. He is on Instagram at catnamebrian. I am on Twitter at Castle Media. That's Castle with a K. And I don't want to waste another good sign-off line on this one.